Welcome to the show. Last week, federal judges sided with Republicans challenging Maryland's electoral map, claiming there is convincing evidence that the Democratic leaders intentionally drew voting boundaries to make it easier for their party to pick up another congressional seat. Ken, do you see an independent commission drawing the congressional map in the near future?
No, not in the near future. This is going to get held
And by
up.
near, you mean the next 800 years?
Well, yeah. I mean, this is going to get held up in appeals, and this is going to draw on and drag on till probably sometime in 2021, where a judge is going to declare the issue moot because 2020 would have already come and gone, and our lines would have been redistributed again, hopefully by a nonpartisan commission, but who knows?
Probably not.
I would love to see an independent commission draw it based upon, maybe county lines or something like that. But let's be realistic. No, this is going to be dragging on for a very long time.
Exactly. County lines or something impartial is the proper way to draw these congressional districts, because you see with the Maryland electoral map, especially in the 6th district, you've got voters from Montgomery County grouped in with people from the far western reaches of Maryland, and those are voters who don't have the same priorities, which makes it very difficult for someone representing that district to represent the priorities of all of their constituents.
Well, and the 6th district is not the worst.
No, it's not.
Of those that are drawn in Maryland.
It's the third, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just horrible.
Yeah.
So this is not a new problem.
No, it's not.
There was a governor in Massachusetts named Elbridge Gerry.
That's how they get the name gerrymandering.
And in 1812, Governor Gerry signed a bill that redistricted Massachusetts to benefit his Democratic Republican Party, as they called it back then. Go figure. And henceforth, it has been known as gerrymandering. And the crazy thing about it is the Republicans in the red states do it all the time.
Exactly. Texas is one of the worst offenders.
Democrats in the blue states do it all the time, and and everybody else is so up in arms that the other party is doing this. Well, guess what? You want to talk about hypocritical?
Exactly.
Oh yeah, both parties do it. It's almost as if maybe we shouldn't leave that up to a partisan person.
Who is not partisan at some level?
Even an independent commission would be somewhat biased. And in a dream world, I would want districts to be drawn as close to literal squares as possible. Obviously, Maryland, our state map, doesn't necessarily coincide with drawing square congressional districts.
Well, the entire East and Midwest doesn't
lend
itself to
yeah, Texas would be a perfect place to do that, yet Texas, extremely gerrymandered. And we can obviously do better in Maryland with that, too.
Well, and, there's something else to think about, too. Would be, we're trying to base this upon geographic lines, all right? But the fact of the matter is you've got a significant part of Maryland feels, one way about certain issues. Other parts of Maryland feel other ways. Now, can we group those in the geographic lines? Somewhat, all right? But maybe, just maybe, we're going about it wrong, all right? Maybe we're going about it wrong as far as, saying, okay, we're going to put this geographic area here, and whoever gets the most votes, you're the representative there, all right? Why don't we have at-large representatives based upon a pool of votes, all right? Put in, all these candidates, and the top 6 vote getters, congratulations, here you go. Then you have fair representation based upon the values of the voters if they can only pick one candidate.
Okay, but
I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah,
because you would end up in a state like Maryland where people living out in Washington County or further west who are extremely conservative in those areas.
And people on the Eastern Shore as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Who would be in a state where you've got possibly 4 or 5, almost the entire state is represented by Democrats, and they don't really have a voice. And when the founders put together congressional districts based off of these geographic lines, the point was for factions in the country to always be able to have that representation, because when you take entire states that are being represented in Congress, you've got a lot of different factions within there. But if you have, Washington County and Weston, Maryland having a representative, and the Eastern Shore having its representative, and the Montgomery County area having their representative in Congress, that localizes it and helps, citizens have a better voice in the federal government.
And I'm not disagreeing with you. Don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to think, maybe there's an alternative solution, and maybe there's a solution out there that none of us have even thought about. It's, the fact of the matter is that, like you said, there at every point, at any point, somebody's going to be somewhat partisan. There's always going to be partisan influence on these districts that really need to be nonpartisan somehow.
And no matter what system you set up, someone's going to try to game that system.
Right.
Well, and that's the point. And it doesn't matter what you do. Somebody's going to find a way around it. Loophole is another famous term, right? And whether you're talking about taxes or voting districts, there's going to be a way to make it happen. Some would argue that people tried to lure Democrats into Northern Virginia to make that more of a Democratic base. Others would argue that the illegal population, as they at some level potentially get access to vote, although I know they're not supposed to, the immigrant population, we'll just call it that, is squarely in the Democratic column. So there's all kinds of things. This is just the easiest way to do it because it only involves changes on paper. But don't think that people won't try to incent people to move to different places to change the election districts.
Well, and maybe talking about people moving to certain places, and talking about how you need to have regions that are need to be represented. Well, maybe it's just time to make a shift away from huge government and make a shift towards more local government instead. I always say...
Spoken like a good Republican. You're a Republican, right?
No.
Isn't that their theory?
I say a government closer to the people can serve those people better.
It absolutely can, and that was what the founders had in mind when they set up our federalist system, and they set up all this local representation. But obviously, we've gotten away from that in the past 200 some years, and it's to the point where the federal government is having an undue effect in people's everyday lives, where our founders would be completely repelled by such a thing.
So, Tyler, you would not be for the federal government drawing election lines?
That's an interesting argument. Obviously, the local states, run the elections. The Constitution says it is the states that run the elections, even for federal seats. But I feel like if you're drawing the election lines even further from the people, then you might start to get representation that goes further from the people. And I think when you conglomerate all that power in one place, that could be problematic as well, where instead of Texas gerrymandering to help the Republicans and Maryland gerrymandering to help the Democrats, whatever party's in charge of the federal government will gerrymander to help themselves, and then we've got a huge problem on our hands.
The entire country.
Yeah, because it's one party representation then.
Big government is great as long as it's your party that's in charge.
Exactly. Next up on the flip side, we'll look at surprise work scheduling and why it's a problem. Stay tuned.